Reports from standing committees.
The following reports are dated January 22, 2025. Mr. President, your committee number 4, Education, to whom is referred Senate File 73, Charter School Funding Amendments, respectfully reports same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Brennan, Olson, Rothfuss, Schuler, and Scott. Senator Schuler, Chairman. Mr. President, Committee number 4, Education, to whom is referred Senate File 98, School Board Trustees, Party Affiliation, respectfully reports same back to the Senate with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Brennan, Olson, and Scott. No, Senators Rothfuss and Schuler. Senator Schuler, Chairman. Mr. President, Committee number 7, Corporations, Elections, and Political Subdivisions, to whom is referred Senate File 42, Resort Hotel Liquor Licenses, respectfully reports same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Boner, Dockstader, and Landon. No, Senator Steinmetz. Conflict, Senator Case. Senator Case, Chairman. Mr. President, your Committee number 7, Corporations, Elections, and Political Subdivisions, to whom was referred Senate File 46, Water and Sewer Districts Bid Requirements, respectfully reports same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Boner, Dockstader, Landon, and Steinmetz. No, Senator Case. Senator Case, Chairman. Mr. President, your Committee number 9, Minerals, Business, and Economic Development, to whom is referred Senate File 95, Special Purpose Depository Institution Amendments, respectfully reports same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Anderson, Cooper, Jones, Nethercott, and Rothfuss. Senator Anderson, Chairman. Mr. President, your Committee number 9, Minerals, Business, and Economic Development, to whom is referred Senate File 20, Oil and Gas Bonding, Options, and Bonding Pools, respectively reports back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators Anderson, Cooper, Jones, Nethercott, and Rothfuss. Senator Anderson, Chairman.
Thank you, Randy. Madam Majority Floor Leader, you want to get us back to Committee of the Whole?
I do, Mr. President. I move that the Senate resolve itself into Committee of the Whole.
You've heard the motion. All in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Senator Pappas, you are being summoned back to the chair, sir.
Okay, the Committee of the Whole will come to order. The first bill for your consideration is Senate File 34. Will the reading clerk please read the bill?
Senate File 34, School Finance Routine and Major Maintenance Calculations, an act relating to K-12 public school finance, sponsored by the School Facilities Commission, was referred to Committee number 4, which returned a committee recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Brennan, Olson, Rothfuss, Schuler, and Scott. Senator Schuler, Chairman. Was re-referred to Committee number 2, which returned a committee recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators Driscoll, Baru, Larson, Salazar, and Smith. Senator Salazar, Chairman.
Thank you. You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure? Senator Schuler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it do so with the recommendation that Senate File 34 do pass. There is an amendment that could be read in.
Could we read in the amendment, please?
Senate File 34, Standing Committee Amendment number 1, page 1, line 5, delete.
Senator Schuler.
Yes, with that, we'll turn the time over to Senator Landon.
Senator Landon.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. After the conversation we've had today, I rise with some trepidation to have you consider a line item. It goes deeper than that, and that's this is not just a line item expenditure that we're considering here. It is an opportunity, I think, for us to put something on the whiteboard for our consideration. For about a decade now, the Select Committee on School Facilities has been encouraging a look at this particular part of the world. It's the money that we set aside and spend to our districts for major maintenance of our buildings. For the purposes to expedite things, you've heard me say and I think this is ballpark sorts of terms, but we have about 25 million square feet of space out across the 48 districts. We have, in the neighborhood of 400 different buildings that we take care of. This is the major and routine maintenance that we provide to the districts to take care of those buildings. What this bill does, Mr. Chairman, school finance routine and major maintenance calculation, it modifies the K-12 major maintenance formula or the K-12 funding models formula in two different ways. The allowable educational square footage is increased from 115% to 135% of the statewide building adequacy standards. The cost replacement value multiplier is increased from 2 to 2.5% for the K-12 major maintenance model. Between the two of those, if you go to the back of the bill, you can find out what that fiscal impact might be. In the interest of brevity today, I just want to give you a little bit of context. Back in about 2017, Mr. Chairman, we began to work with consultants who came in and indicated to us that we were not putting enough money aside for the maintenance of our buildings. We are on a bell curve right now, fellow senators, of about 50 years. We'd like for those buildings to last for 75 years. That's really what we're talking about today with this bill. The president served on that select committee. The good senator from Albany County has been on that committee with me for a long time. We have brought this issue in front of the body. We chose to do it again this year. And understanding full well what the climate is, what our situation is, how difficult it is to set money aside for this. But frankly, folks, it's something that we wanted to make sure you remain aware of. And that is, are we going to take care of the buildings that we own out across the state? We know how expensive new construction is. We're up around $400 to $500 a square foot now. Can you believe it as a former architect, Mr. Chairman? Wow. We're talking, just implementing a bill like this, for example, senators, we're talking 20, 30 years out, saving the state a couple of $1 billion. That's what we're talking about. And as I mentioned, we're talking about the longevity of these buildings. We need to take care of them. What the select committee is suggesting to the body today is that we do this. We do it in the two ways that I described. And I can get into more conversation about those formulas. They have been found by the courts to be constitutional, the way we calculate our maintenance formulas. Be happy to visit more about it, but that's what the bill does. There is a standing committee amendment that comes from the second committee, and I will hand it over at this point to the chairman of the Appropriations Committee if he so desires to visit with you about that amendment. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Landon. Senator Salazar, are you going to be presenting the amendment, the standing? No? Okay, Senator Landon, back to you then.
So the standing committee amendment comes from the other committee, and I would ask you to vote no.
Yeah, it has not been moved yet, so we need to move the amendment.
I thought you moved it, Wendy, didn't you? Oh, you said it right in?
Senator Driscoll.
Mr. Chairman, have we had the amendment read in?
It's been read in.
Thank you.
Needs to be moved.
Mr. Chairman, I move Standing Committee Amendment Number 1 to Senate File 34. Folks, what this does is if you look at the fiscal profile on this, we've allowed these schools to have 10% of this money. Basically, it's a slush fund. It actually isn't totally used for maintenance. They're allowed to use it for putting a savings account for future enhancements, to pay for maintenance and upkeep on enhancements. The they paid for, and now we're on the hook for paying for part of it. So this money, if you take this amendment, it takes that 10% and actually makes them spend the money on maintenance of our facilities that we've done, and makes them figure out how to fund their enhancements for their schools, which they're allowed to put that money away and save it, or to spend it for some other purposes that fall within a defined means. And I'm a big believer. We build the facilities, we do it, we take a good care of them, but they shouldn't be using this money to create things that cost more money and do it. If they want enhancements, they should pay for it out of their own funding that comes in. Firewalls are for the period of this bill. The second part of it is we eliminated the 5.5 million that was for, I'm trying to look what it is, I've got to look at it. It's entitlement payments, and it just cuts that off. It's just a deal to kind of round off what the total cost of this was. Thank you.
So we're on the amendment? On the amendment. Senator Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Discussing that 10% for enhancements. On a lot of our small schools, those enhancements are, well, two of them I can think of directly in my district. One of those enhancements is the fact that we have a gym added to that high school. When they built the school, they didn't have enough money for a gym, so they used the gym as an enhancement. In another school, it's the CTE building. And that maintenance, that 10% maintenance fee right now is being used to maintain that gym and to maintain that CTE building. So there are people who are misusing the 10%, I don't have any doubt, but there are other schools that 10% is critical for. On and against the amendment.
Senator Rothfuss.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to clarify a few things. There's some inaccuracies in I think the understanding of what this amendment does and what the bill does. The first part with regard to the 10% towards enhancements, what it says in statute is that up to 10% of the major maintenance funding you have can go towards existing enhancements, but not more than that. That doesn't mean that districts are using 10% for enhancements. That's actually quite uncommon. Getting back to what the good senator from Natchitoches County was talking about, we're already dramatically underfunding major maintenance for schools relative to how it should be or relative to how we do it for every other building, including this one in the state. We underfund. And while we're discussing this point, I want to talk about how dramatically we underfund it. First of all, we don't fund all the square footage. That's one of the things that the bill addresses. So you can imagine that you have a building with 100,000 square feet. You would think that major maintenance would be applied for 100,000 square feet because that's the size of the building. That's how we do it for every other building in the state's fleet. You just look around and you say, 100,000 square feet, we're going to fund 100,000 square feet of major maintenance. With the school foundation program, we don't do it that way. We calculate how many students are in that building, what is an adequate number of square footage for those students, and then we multiply that by 1.15, and we have that be the cap. So what that leads to, more often than not, based on that 115%, is that rather than funding that 100,000, we fund 90,000 square feet. So we're underfunding the square footage from the baseline because we're looking at the number of students, and oftentimes it's more than 10%, so we're already behind. At the same time, we had expert analysis a few years ago trying to figure out what the most cost-effective percentage of major maintenance would be. The state funds at 2%, so that's 2% of the calculated value of the building, the replacement value of the building, annually becomes the major maintenance. Again, we've already diminished that by some percentage based on the square footage, but we'll take 2% of that value. What we learned, Mr. Chairman, is that 2.75% is the most cost-effective number for the state to maintain the fleet and preserve the schools so that we don't have to replace them. That gets us a 75-year school instead of a 50-year school, and it turns out that building new schools is expensive. That's something that we've all experienced in here. So when you diminish from the 2.75% to the 2%, you've underfunded it once again. A third way we underfund it is when we're calculating the value of the building, that replacement value, we use a national organization that provides estimates of construction cost. That national organization is nowhere near what the construction costs in the state of Wyoming are. We would dream of days when we could replace a building or build a building for that cost.
Mr. Chairman, can I inquire, are we on the bill or are we on the amendment?
Mr. Chairman, we are certainly on the amendment.
We are on the amendment.
I understand what the amendment does. I'm pointing that out, and I'm explaining why it would be a poor decision to adopt the amendment. Yeah. So you see that we have discounted 3 different times what we pay for major maintenance. Now, when we come in and we talk about this 10%, which is being cut out, what that amendment actually does has nothing to do with the 10%, which is deemed a slush. What it has to do with is just saying we're not going to carry this on. We don't continue to have this in the standard budget. We just do it one time. That's the first part of the amendment. So the 10% enhancement aspect is actually drawing away from an already insufficient amount of funding. The second half of the budget, which deals with the entitlement payment aspect, is really an unworkable budget amendment, Mr. Chairman. And the reason I say it's unworkable is because when you increase the calculation for the allowable square footage, that triggers a payment from the school foundation program on routine maintenance. That trigger, based on this legislation, is valued at $5.5 million. So the appropriations amendment strikes the $5.5 million, but I assure you, we have to pay the $5.5 million anyway, because that's the cost of the school foundation program obligation when you recalculate the square footage. So, Mr. Chairman, there are a lot of reasons why this amendment is inappropriate, and we can debate the bill on its merits, but this amendment does not target those merits, and it would be detrimental to what the bill is trying to do in terms of actually achieving an appropriate level of major maintenance. So I'll pause there and urge the body to vote down this particular amendment and discuss the bill on its merits.
Further discussion on the amendment? Senator Driscoll.
Mr. Chairman, for my second time. Oh, committee of the whole, I'm sorry. Great talk, falls right in deal, but he talked about 115%. What this bill does moves it from 115 to 135. We're taking a huge jump, folks, and it's the right direction. I don't disagree at all. Now let's take a talk about what we're doing money-wise. This is $38 million a year forever. This is a big jump, a one-time, and it's a big bite on our budget. And I totally believe in maintaining the buildings. What the amendment tries to do, what it actually does, says you'll spend these dollars maintaining buildings that we've built, not maintaining enhancements that you built on your own voluntarily. If you want to build new swimming pools, and even to a CTE center, which I fully agree with, I live in a rural community, you should be maintaining those if you're using money outside of the model to build those buildings and to do them. You should have a sinking fund, or you should maintain them out of your local district dollars, which you have a block grant. It's a never-ending deal as the state builds buildings and we build new swimming pools and we build additions with local enhancements without a sinking fund. This number will continue to rise. I encourage you, when we spend all our dollars, let's spend them on what we're obligated to build and do, and not use them to maintain additions that were built on that are voluntary. So I encourage you to stand behind it. Even if the second half is there, this is all inside money. It all comes out of the pot. They can fund it. They can fund it. We may have done somewhat of an unfunded mandate, but with $38 million I represent, we probably haven't bankrupted the fund.
Senator Hicks.
Mr. President, on and for the amendment, certainly the amendment's divisible. The amendment does two things. It appropriates $38 million to go towards major maintenance. It's a one-time $38 million. The way the bill's constructed is my colleague from Crook County is correct. That's $38 million that biennializes, that then becomes part of the permanent base. My concern in committee was, as we just discussed, looking at the long-term profile. We're already kind of headed in the wrong direction. We have some one-time funding here. Let's get some of these major maintenance component. That's one part of the bill. That's the first part that just says we're going to obligate $38 million to major maintenance, one time. Next year, we'll come back and reevaluate based on the actions of this legislature, the balance in the count, how our investment's done. You'll be able to make better decisions as to whether you want that ongoing and continuation. The second part of the amendment deals with the routine maintenance that's into the block model. And that just goes in there, that $5.5 million would go in there. That was completely cut out by the Appropriations Committee. Again, I'm not going to speak for the Appropriations Committee. That biennializes too. So the next biennium, that's automatically in there. That's an $11 million increase that you won't ever see again. And so I guess when I look at this thing, knowing some of the unknown issues of where we're at with the actions of the legislature of the whole, what the budget is, I think just it's fiscally prudent to come back and reevaluate these next years. And if we're in a situation that we're looking at excess revenues, then certainly we need, and I agree with everything my colleague and the chairman of the Senate committee said, we're behind on our major maintenance on these buildings, but we can only afford what we can afford. And so on and for the amendment, certainly it's divisible if somebody would want to do that.
Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the good senator from Devil's Tower area, there is nothing in this amendment that has anything to do with the enhancement money. Everybody read it in. Just take a minute, read the amendment in. There is a part of statute that deals with the 10% enhancement. This amendment has nothing to do with that part of statute. This amendment does two things. It takes a biennialized appropriation and turns it into a one-year appropriation. That's lines 1 through 9. Line 10 of the amendment eliminates the $5.5 million that goes towards routine maintenance, which is an obligation of the school foundation program. Nothing here in any way, shape, or form affects the debate about the enhancement. Again, pause, read it in. Vote no.
Senator Landon.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And just a little bit more conversation about enhancements. If you go up to the President's neck to the woods, there's a school that was built before the state plan took over, for example. Bigger hallways, a little bit bigger common area. That's now considered an enhancement. If you go to the Vice President's neck of the woods, there is a high school there that was rebuilt a few years ago, and they chose to keep a large gymnasium structure because it was already built, it was fine, we could renovate it, but it was way too many square footages for what we allow. So that's now considered an enhancement. So not all of this is a swimming pool. Now, if you come to this community, I can find you a swimming pool that is an enhancement. The district stepped in and did a lot of that. I don't know if there's a sinking fund on that one. Over in Albany County, that community wanted some enhancements on a new high school. They taxed themselves, they put a sinking fund in place, and they're paying for the enhancements. So this is not all about enhancement. What the senator from Albany County pointed out, folks, is that if we put this major maintenance money into the model, it triggers the routine maintenance, because we are now approving that additional square footage that we're willing to pay for. We're still tens of thousands of square feet behind out there. About 20 years ago, we used to pay 200%. We have consistently ratcheted that down. These last handful of years, we've realized that we've probably gone too far. We've got to get it back up. We haven't been providing the districts what they need. So I hope that helps to further understand what we're doing here. I do not think that that portion of the amendment works. If you want it to be one time, that's a whole nother consideration. We can always come back down year after year and visit about this same thing. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any more discussion on the amendment? Senator Scott.
Mr. Chairman, on and against the amendment. Mr. Chairman, we've had a long history in this legislature. We get government programs, we establish things, we build things, and then we have a history of systematically cutting them, underfunding them short-term, and getting us in long-term trouble. And I'm afraid that that's what the amendment is going to do here. I've had a lot of concern with our spending too much on school capital construction. I maintain that concern. But this, it appears to me, this bill was a careful attempt to say, how much does it really cost us on a long-term basis? How much do we need to put in to keep the buildings properly maintained? And I think, frankly, I think we'd be better off, Mr. Chairman, spending a little extra money here, keep our facilities we have built up to snuff so we don't have to buy as much expensive long-term. So for those reasons, I think this is one of several areas. I think we ought to take this attitude. I think that we should defeat this amendment and try to get the long-term maintenance money adequately funded.
Are you ready for the question? All those in favor of Senator Driscoll's motion to adopt Standing Committee Amendment Number 1 to Senate File 34, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no?
No.
The amendment has been defeated. Division being called. All those in favor, please stand. Thank you. Please be seated. All those opposed, please stand. The vote was 16 aye, 13 no. The motion has passed. The amendment has passed. We're back on the bill. Senator Landon.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Just a couple more thoughts. Thank you for a great debate, senators. I think what I'd like to do is just offer a little anecdotal thing for you to think about. So for this next generation, our kids, in some cases our grandkids, we're going to hand the keys over to our school buildings. And what this is really all about is if you can hand it over to them and feel good about it, or if you're going to hand the keys over to them and say, you know what, we didn't get to the roof, and you're going to have to replace the gym floor. And by the way, it really needs a lot of paint on the outside of this place. This is really what we're talking about, folks, is what are we going to hand over to the next generation? It doesn't hurt us day by day for us to underfund major maintenance. We think everything's just fine and hunky-dory out across, right? Well, it's not. We know we're underfunding it. I told you about the bell curve. Our bell curve looks at 50 years right now. Is that how long you want your schools to last? Or do we want to try to get them to 75 years? So I hope you'll support this, even at one time. A one-time funding of major maintenance dollars is going to make a difference. So I hope you'll support the bill. Thank you.
Okay, are we ready for the question? All those in favor of Senator Schuler's motion, all in favor of Senator Schuler's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report that it do so with favorable recommendation of Senate File 34, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say no. Senate File 34 has passed the committee of the whole. Next bill on our agenda is Senate File 63. Senator Craigo,
Privilege of the floor.
you may.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to welcome a former chairman from down the hall, Mr. Mike Madden, and his wife Cheryl, down here to visit us today. And if everybody would help me welcome to the Senate, I'd sure appreciate it. Sure.
Sure was. That's great.
Okay, now where were we? Senate File 63. Would you please read it in?
Senate File 63, State Lands Fencing 2, an act relating to state lands, sponsored by Senator Craigo, was referred to Committee Number 5, which returned to committee recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators Craigo, French, Ide, McEwen, and Pearson. Senator French, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure? Senator French.
I move that when the committee of the whole rise to report, it do so with the recommendation that Senate File 63 do pass. And for an explanation, I call on Senator Craigo.
Senator Craigo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Today I bring to you Senate File 63, State Lands Fencing Number 2, and ask for your favorable consideration. Mr. Chairman, during the interim, the Joint Ag Committee worked on this particular issue. We were presented with a problem, sort of middle of our interim work related to fencing on state lands. After much discussion with our state agency that handles our state lands, we learned that there's really not a clear direction regarding the financial responsibility of parties wishing to build a fence along a state land boundary. As a committee, we attempted to address the problem and give the agency some direction. However, at the end of the day, the bill that we came up with in committee really became too complicated. And there was a general belief, Mr. Chairman, that the bill was treating state lands differently than other landowners, and quite honestly, unfairly. And that was probably a fair assumption or a fair reading of that committee bill. And so it failed. And in response to those concerns, I worked on this individual bill with the help of some of our stakeholders, consultation with some of our members, and our good staff to simplify the language and treat state lands similar to other landowners. And if you take a look at the bill, it's pretty simple. It creates one new subsection within section 1129-106. And 1129-106 is the current fencing language. And it allocates responsibility. If a new boundary fence is built between landowners, it provides what happens. The new subsection, which would be subsection C that this bill proposes, says landowners whose property adjoins state lands on which the landowner does not hold a lease may construct a lawful partition fence along state lands, and the Office of State Lands and Investments shall pay for 1/2 of the actual cost of the construction of the lawful partition fence. Landowners in the Office of State Lands and Investments shall contribute to the cost of maintenance of the lawful partition fence in proportion to their respective interests in the fence. So this language is very similar to the language in subsection A above. But there's one difference, and if you'll notice, it talks about this does not apply when the leaseholder is the adjoining property owner. And the whole point of that is so that the current leaseholder cannot game the system and charge state lands for essentially building what I would call a management fence. When they have the piece of state land within their current ag operation, they can't use this statute to go build a fence around whatever size of state lands they have just to create a new pasture. This would only apply when we're talking about the boundary owner, the owner on the other side of the boundary being the non-lessee. Moving on to section 2 on page 2, there is an amendment regarding that, and I asked to be read in at this time.
Yep.
Senate File 63, Standing Committee Amendment Number 1, page 2, line 8, delete.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would move Standing Committee Amendment Number 1 to Senate File 63. And during committee, the agency that handles our state lands asked for a simple amendment here. And so under the current language, it says the Office of State Lands and Investments shall promulgate rules. And they asked that that language be changed and edited out to say the Board of Land Commissioners. And that's all the Standing Committee Amendment does. I'd take any questions on that, on the amendment, Mr. Chairman.
Questions on the amendment? See, question being called for. All those in favor of Senator Crago's motion to adopt Standing Committee Amendment Number 1 to Senate File 63, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The amendment has been adopted. Continue.
Back on the bill, Mr. Chairman. So this language is somewhat important. As I read the bill and as I was drafting the bill, I thought this language would allow our office to promulgate rules to pass the cost of whatever fence may need to be erected or is erected by one of the neighboring landowners onto the lessee, if there is a lessee. Now, there may be some issues where there's a vacant parcel and there is no lessee, and now those costs would fall on state lands. But where there is a lessee, I believe state lands could pass that cost on to the lessee. State lands the office is a little worried. I'm working on an amendment to make it more clear so that it's very distinct within the proposed language. I'm not sure it's necessary, but I'm happy to work on that. At the end of the day, Mr. Chairman, this is just a good neighbor bill. Our state lands should be treated just like all other lands for the purposes of fencing, and I would stand for any questions on the bill.
Questions on the bill? Senator Scott.
Mr. Chairman, as the members who've been in the Senate before know, I have a fair amount of state leases in my family business. I've typically declared a conflict of interest when we have a bill that relates to state lands. I'm not going to do so in this instance because as I look at our particular state leases, I don't think this bill will apply to any of them, just the way they're situated. So I just wanted to make that clear because I do so often declare a conflict on these things. This one, I don't think I've got one.
Thank you, Senator Scott. Any further questions? Seeing none, all those in favor of Senator French's motion that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report that it do so with favorable recommendation on Senate File 63, please say aye. Those opposed, say no. Senate File 63 has passed the Committee of the Whole. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 80. Will the reading clerk please read the bill?
Senate File 80, Abandonment of Water Rights Limitations, an act relating to water, sponsored by the Water Committee. Was referred to Committee Number 5, which returned to committee recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Craigo, French, Ide, McEwen, and Pearson. Senator French, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Senator French?
I move that when the committee of the whole rises to report, they do so with the recommendation that explanation of it, I call on Senator Steinmetz.
Senator Steinmetz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Today, we bring to you Senate File 80, Abandonment of Water Rights Limitations, which seeks to remedy a situation that we're having across the state with our aging irrigation infrastructure. Many times when we are repairing dams or diversions across the state, the time limitation in which a water right may not be able to be fully or in use at all, fully or partially, could exceed the limitation of 5 years. The abandonment statute reads that if you intentionally or unintentionally fail to use your water within 5 years, it could be subject to abandonment. That is not automatic. The state engineer's office does not automatically do that, but another appropriator, either junior or senior, down the line could petition for abandonment and then seek to use those water rights for themselves and have them reapportioned for themselves. And so, as you know, we have a dam project that is extremely important going on right now where this would apply, but it is not solely subject to that. It would be a dam or a diversion structure. The meat of the bill is found on page 2, where it allows for the owner of a lawful dam or diversion system, which appropriated water becomes unused due to a necessary repair or replacement, may apply to the Board of Control for an extension of time not to exceed 5 years within which to use the water or reactivate the use of water. This is very important because the Board of Control is still maintains control. They can decide whether they're diligently working at this or not. And the extension of 5 years can be reapplied for. So say it might take 10 years, they can reapply to the Board of Control and make sure that they're moving along with their progress. The other change is on page 4, and it just inserts lawful dam or diversion system on line 14. With that, Mr. Chairman, that's pretty much the bill, and I'd stand for any questions.
We do have an amendment on the bill. It's a Committee of the Whole amendment. Would you like, from Senator Craigo, would you like to present that amendment, or would you like to have the bill discussed first?
Either way, it doesn't necessarily affect the substance of the bill, so I'll
Okay,
go ahead
well,
and...
let's dispose of it. Could we have the amendment read in, please?
Senate File 80, Committee of the Whole Amendment Number 1, page 1, line 3, delete.
Okay, we're on the amendment.
I would move Committee of the Whole Amendment Number 1 to Senate File 80, Mr. Chairman. So this bill just moves up the effective date. As the bill draft currently states, it's the standard July 1st effective date. I just, in thinking about it between committee and here, I figured the earlier the effective date, the better. I don't want us losing any of our water rights downstream, and this would give us the best option to prevent that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Stand for any questions.
Comments on the amendment? Question being called for. All those in favor of Senator Craigo's motion to adopt Committee of the Whole Amendment Number 1 to Senate File 80, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The amendment, Standing Committee Amendment Committee of the Whole Amendment Number 1 has been adopted. We're back on the bill. Senator Landon.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, and I apologize if I'm missing something. I'm wondering, in the case of a water right that has been interrupted by the dam project that we talked about. I noticed in the language, it doesn't look like we give any special consideration to someone whose water rights may have expired during the time that we have that project under construction. And I wondered if there was any conversation about, I'm just worried about somebody losing a water right. It seems like maybe there should be some language in there to say, obviously, we're going to give that back to you as soon as we have a dam completed. Hope that makes sense. I'm just a little curious about that. Thank you.
Senator Steinmetz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The dam we're specifically talking about right now has been under a reduced allocation for only 4 years. So this would apply right now and affect that. But some of the language, or reactivate the use of water, was also placed in there to address that situation. So that the state engineer believes this language is appropriate and will take care of all the situations we have going on at the moment. And then, of course, when it becomes effective immediately, any situations we'd have in the future.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Are you ready for the question? All those in favor of Senator French's motion that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report that it do so with favorable recommendation on Senate File 80, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. Senate File 80 has passed Committee of the Whole. The next bill for your consideration is Senate File 8. Will the reading clerk please read in the bill?
Senate File 8, Protection Orders Effective During Appeal or Review, an act relating to protection orders sponsored by the Judiciary Committee. Was referred to Committee Number 1, returned to Committee recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Craigo, Crum, Hicks, and Olson. Excused, Senator Cold. Senator Olson, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure? Senator Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Excuse me. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, that it do so with the recommendation that Senate File 8 do pass. There are no standing committee amendments on this bill, and I will turn over the explanation of the bill to Senator Hicks.
Senator Hicks.
Mr. Chairman, members of the body, I believe you moved it, Mr. Chairman? You moved? There's no amendment. Okay, no amendment. So an explanation, members of the body, this is part of the work of the Interim Judiciary Committee, some good work. It deals with two provisions in statutes, which is stalking and sexual assault, domestic violence, and protection. It deals specifically for protection orders, and it's conforming within to both of those statutes under Title VII and Title 35. Pretty simple bill, just tries to clean up some potential lapses in orders. And so what the bill does is it says if there is an order, it shall remain in effect during the pendency of an appeal, a review of an order for protection. If there is any decision to modify or extend an order, that protection order stays in place unless the stay during the pendency is reviewed by a judge. And so it just puts in place that if there's an order, a review of an order, any pendency, that order for protection for those provisions under Title VII and Title V stay in place. Stand for any questions.
Questions? Seeing none, all those in favor of Senator Senator Olson, thank you. Senator Olson's motion that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report that it do so with a favorable recommendation on Senate File 8, please say aye. Those opposed, please say no. Senate File 8 has passed the Committee of the Whole. The next bill for your consideration is Senate File 3. Will the reading clerk please read the bill?
Senate File 3, Mule and White-tailed Deer Separate Hunting Seasons, an act relating to game and fish sponsored by the Travel Committee. Was referred to Committee Number 6, which returned to Committee recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Boner, Hicks, Jones, and Schuler. No, Senator Landon. Senator Landon, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Senator Landon?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I see somebody coming back in the room that'll be interested in this one, and I'm glad he's here. Because I don't think he wants me to represent this bill. So I would move, fellow senators, that when the committee of the whole rises to report it, do so with a due pass recommendation on Senate File 3, mule and white-tailed deer separate hunting seasons. And for an explanation of this bill, Mr. Chairman, I'd ask that you call on the senator from the Devil's Tower.
Senator Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The bill's been moved. I believe we have an amendment on it. It isn't here. Should be.
I don't believe we have one.
I'll run it as a second. It's no problem. So I'll go into the bill. It's kind of an old friend of ours. We've been through this before. Little like what we talked about earlier, this is a Wildlife Task Force recommendation you met 6 times over 18 months. Highly talked about. This bill merely separates in statute species of mule deer and white-tailed deer. And you'll be getting lots of emails about how it's going to increase hunting pressure or do this or do that. What this bill actually does by defining them separately, which, by the way, I encourage you to pull up Game and Fish deer hunting regulations, you'll find that they specify mule deer and white-tailed deer all the way up and down. They've got mule deer licenses, white-tail licenses. They already do this everywhere but where I live at. I live in Region A General, which is areas 1 through 5, 1 through 3. They just do any deer up there. And I happen to live on a ranch that historically has been a phenomenal mule deer production factory. Did really well. As we've heard before, the Black Hills are a great spot. We're struggling with mule deer in the state of Wyoming. Virtually every herd unit across the state's in decline. We have one area that they're actually trying to make a big comeback on. Is we had a disease came in, killed a lot of our white-tailed deer. Mule deer coming back, and I'm trying to put a tool in the hands of the Game and Fish. I'm not telling them what to do. I'm putting a tool that statutorily lets them split those 2 licenses, and you'll hear, well, guys are gonna get 2 licenses. This bill doesn't do that. It says Game and Fish can do 2 licenses, which they do now. Sometimes they'll issue 5 additional. What it does is allows them, and the really big part of it, it's gonna allow them to charge different license fees for mule deer to whitetail. So they can encourage one or the other. It also allows them to set herd quotas that are actually able to be enforced. Right now, if you look at statistics for harvest, you'll see a number for mule deer and whitetail in the Black Hills. They aren't actual harvest sticks. They're estimates, because any hunter that comes up there, unless it's a type license, they get to shoot what they want. And I can tell you, my experience is this: a hunter that has the ability to take either one generally shoots the mule deer. They'll shoot a 3-point mule deer that's 22 inches wide, opposed to an 18-inch whitetail that's a nice 4-point. So I'm hoping to give the Game and Fish a tool to actually be able to do it. They can continue to manage exactly like they are now. This license doesn't force them to change their management practices. It puts another tool in their hands to be able to more effectively manage. I in no way want to tell them how to manage it. The other part that you'll hear is it's going to increase hunting pressure. And it actually gives them the ability to do just the opposite. If you hold a mule deer tag and a whitetail tag, if you look around the state, nearly all of the seasons don't overlap. They're kind of in pieces, but they do it. It actually spreads out the 100 days. The only way you'd increase hunter pressure is if they decide not to make mule deer a dry area, which it is not now, and they do it in a lot of areas, and allow unlimited harvest. Now you may get more guys come in general, but they can anyway right now. We're unlimited. If you're a resident hunter, you buy a Region A general license or buy a general license, you can hunt anywhere in the general areas in the state. And guess where a lot of them end up? And I happily see them there. They come up in my area of the woods because it's last season in the state that's open generally. So we get a lot of pressure on our public grounds. I'm happy with it. But I really would like to see the state really work to encourage mule deer. The last part I'm gonna talk about is science versus managing by public opinion. There is no way possible to issue a license for both species of deer together and call them deer, set objectives for both herds, and then pray that the hunters kill the right amount of each one of them. The way that you scientifically do an objective is when you say, I want 5,000 mule deer and 10,000 whitetail, is you manage that area to get, by license, to get the harvest you want. If you want to increase one of them, generally what you do is something called scarcity. You limit those licenses so that that herd can actually grow, and you'll see that through the regulations if you do it. Some areas of the state will say mule deer buck, some say 4 points or bigger. That's how you manage the herds. And I'm giving them a tool to be able to do that. The last statement I'll make is these mule deer herds in decline. We're not succeeding in getting them to come up under present ways. We're gonna have to look at some new tools to do it. White-tailed deer, and I have been wildly criticized because I called them a noxious weed. I can regrow a whitetail herd on my ranch, and I control a big chunky irrigated ground that doesn't. I can do it blindly. They reproduce fast enough that they get far enough ahead of us that neither us nor Game and Fish can manage the herd. Just the opposite's true for mule deer. I can decimate my mule deer herd next week. If we get ready and season comes and I let guys hunt my mule deer, I can effectively eliminate the mule deer herd. Lastly, whitetail drive mule deer out of the good habitat. So if you go statewide, go back to the 1970s, the main whitetail herd in the state of Wyoming resided in the Black Hills, right where I live, right on my ranch. I've watched from the 1970s to now, every irrigated valley in the state of Wyoming has a whitetail herd in it now, everyone. I don't care where you're at, if you irrigate and you do a good job, you'll have a whitetail herd. That whitetail herd, as they multiply and take the habitat, drive mule deer into the next level of habitat out. And that causes the decline in the mule deer when you hit bad drought years and fires and tough things. So I'm trying to give them a tool to be able to manage. I'm not forcing them to manage. This bill does not say you will do this, you will do it this way. It literally says you have one more tool that you can use to differentiate these two species. Right now, it's deer. The law says deer. This allows them to say whitetail deer, mule deer, and you can manage them differently. The amendment that's coming, folks, we had one of the past biologists came and testified that I've been wrong all along. It's not white-tailed deer, it's white-tailed deer. So the amendment is actually gonna put it where it's technically correct what I've done. I'd ask for your favorable consideration. Anybody that's getting emails about what it's doing, please come see me. I'll either answer them on the floor or I'll come back. But the rumor mill that's out there generating, which we see often in these game bills, is absolutely untrue. Game and Fish has the ability to manage that herd however they see fit. This bill does not change that. I'd ask for your favorable consideration.
Discussion on the bill? Senator Anderson.
Mr. Chairman, I did have a question from a constituent. The only question they had was, would this extend the season? Would there be a whitetail season and then a mule deer season? And so they would have, instead of 2 weeks hunting, it'd be 4 weeks of hunting. It wasn't clear to them, and it isn't to me either.
Senator Schuler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, this came from the Wildlife Task Force, a lot of work on this. I think originally the idea behind this was we had a couple of winters that were really tough on a mule deer, and the whitetail, as the good senator from Crook County said, has been kind of pushing them out anyway. So the idea was to kind of help revive that other species and let the Game and Fish try to manage as best they could in certain areas. I think the best testimony I heard really from Game and Fish was that they did a survey, and they had 7,180 hunters reply on this particular bill, and 45% of them supported this bill. 30% didn't really have an opinion one way or the other, and only 25% opposed. So only about a fourth of the hunters were really against this. Now up in Crook County, that might be a little different situation, but again, I think there's some other things that Game and Fish can do to help with this, and I think that suggestion from the good senator from Trona County might be one of them. Maybe extending the season a little bit for the whitetails. There's some other things, they're the scientists, I'm not, but I think, again, this bill, it gets us where we need to get with both our whitetail and our mule deers. Thank you, I hope you'll approve it.
Okay, Senator Ide, did you have a comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just real quick, on those fees, can somebody explain that to me, when they're set and how they're calculated and why they're so high in areas? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Driscoll.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. My mind's small, so I'll answer the few, and I'll answer more if I need to. I'll start with my good friend in front of me from the Windy City. As far as seasons, extending them, doing whatever, that's up to the commission. I'm not in any way telling them how to shoot deer or manage deer. They set those. If they choose to do one season in June and one in October, that's up to them, and I trust them. They got biologists that are really good guys. As far as the survey, I'm going to tell you a little about surveys and how they work. When you survey hunters and landowners, it's a little like asking about property tax relief. They're going to answer what's best for them personally, not what's necessarily best for the game herd. And so for me, if I'm a hunter guy, of course I want to be able to shoot either a mule deer or a whitetail, and probably 2 or 3 if it's available to me. But if I'm doing it from a science standpoint, I'm trying to protect the herd, let's actually look at science, not at whether we're talking to outfitters, landowners, or hunters. I am a landowner. I have been an outfitter. The outfitters have gone from being opposed to this to being in favor of it. Interestingly enough, on the Wildlife Task Force, the department came out in favor of it, and one of their own wildlife biologists wrote a column and went against the director of the department. It was very interesting. So it tells you how polarized it can be. I will tell you, one of the biggest outfitters in the state is who outfits on my ranch. He tells me it's going to be a money hit for him, but he's for the game. He'd like to see us long-term take care of the game herds correctly, even if it means a hit for his pocket. So I think this is it's a good bill. Sometimes they're hard to do, but for all of us, we should be here for habitat and game, not for hunting opportunities for us, as opposed to long-term creating more hunting. Thank you.
Senator Hicks.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, just to answer my colleague from the Trona County, those are the existing fees. Just because we've now separated those two, we have to, but those fees are the existing ones that are being paid by residents, non-residents, and then those special fees. So nothing changes there, those are already in place, but because we segregated these now, we have to put that in statutes because the legislature sets those hunting fees, not the Game and Fish Commission or the department.
Senator Landon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Really appreciate my friend from the tower. Did a great job of explaining his passion for the bill and his passion for wildlife up there. He lives in one of the pieces of God's country, that's for sure. I just wanted to let fellow senators know why I voted against the bill. Primarily, I voted against this measure because I haven't run across a sportsman yet who likes it. There's not a sportsman up in my district that I have found that likes this. And whether perception is reality, the fact is our sportsmen out there believe that now they're going to be buying 2 licenses. They also believe that that it's going to benefit the Game and Fish and the landowners. That's the perception. I don't know if that's going to be reality. I believe in the Game and Fish Department. It's highly regarded, one of the best in the country in what they do, and I think that whichever way we go, I believe the department will be able to manage those animals. They really don't need this bill. They're doing everything that the good senator pointed out should be done with respect to mule deer and whitetail deer. They're doing it now, and it's working. Every one of us are concerned about our mule deer herd. I think we're all going to be doing everything we can. I know that my sportsmen, my neck of the woods, I've run into dozens who have said they continue to buy deer licenses and they're not hunting mule deer because they're trying to help out. So for all those reasons, just the simple fact that we don't need the bill, we're already managing deer populations, and on behalf of the sportsmen in my neck of the woods, I'm a no vote. Thank you.
Senator Crum.
Mr. Chairman, just following up on Senator from Casper's comment, I noticed when I open up the deer regulations, in there it says, if I go up to the Black Hills, whitetail only. You know, you can hunt whitetail only. They have extended seasons and things like that. So my question is, why do we need this bill when looks to me like they're already managing those herds with the regulations that are already in place?
For the Senator Driscoll.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. We actually do need this because it allows them another tool in the box to be able to actually separate the species. They do it kind of hit and miss right now. At worst, this bill just leaves it the way it is. At best, it gives them another tool in the box to be able to further manage. And that's what I want to do. I want Game and Fish to have every tool possible. You know, my suggestion back to the 2 tags, that is blatantly not true. If they want 2 tags, they'll issue 2 tags. I've left everything to the commission. I haven't said issue 2 tags. As far as landowners making money, it's going to be a hit. The truth is, right now, Game and Fish is deferring the management of the herds to individual landowners. Guys like me, I'm doing everything in my power to protect the mule deer herd. They aren't, I am. They're letting me as a landowner, if I want to, I can wipe out my mule deer herd. So I'm the one that's saving the mule deer herd. It's not them. They're letting every hunter hunt whatever they want. Our ranch will not allow someone to kill a mule deer right now. And the truth is, the only reason the mule deer are recovering, it's not because of Game and Fish management. We had Blue Tongue and EHD came through and they killed 700 to 1,000 deer on my ranch. And you know, something miraculous happened within 3 years of them dying. Where we'd had about 5 or 6 head of mule deer, I've now got 150 plus, and they're starting to move into my back country. And that's what I'm asking for, is help to recover a mule deer herd. Not to force them to do it, but to give them a tool to help us do it. And I think we're gonna find over time, if you look at the numbers, and I can pull them up, I've got the graphs and the charts, mule deer herd are in decline almost statewide. That doesn't indicate that what we're doing is working, folks. I keep hearing everything's working. But facts are, numbers don't lie. Our herds, and part of it's drought. Let's not discount fires, drought, and other things. The herds are declining. Let's do everything we can to give them every tool they can possibly have to manage. I'm not telling them issue 2 licenses. I'm not telling them that you have to split them. And by the way, my recommendation when I testified to the committee, which the good chairman will probably attest to, I said if I had my way, anybody that held a mule deer buck tag should be able to kill a whitetail buck on that same tag with no penalty. I have no problem if you're hunting a big mule deer and you see that big whitetail, go shoot him. Because the big whitetail is going to come back. But when you shoot that big mule deer buck, there's a very good chance if you're in a high whitetail area, you just filled in with some more whitetail deer that now kept the next mule deer buck from growing.
Senator Dockstader.
Thank you. We consistently put the people who have oversight of this agency on the airwaves out west. We talk about a variety of topics. And I'm trying to think back, and we have not had this come up as an issue or concern. So this question is to the committee, anybody on the committee. Is this something that originated with those on the committee? Why all of a sudden is this a situation where we need to separate out these licenses? This hasn't been discussed, and we have those who have oversight of this agency on a regular basis, and this one hasn't come up. So I'm trying to decide why all of a sudden this is an issue.
Senator Ide.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I think I'm a little slow on the uptake here too. Separating these licenses, good Senator, from Devil's Tower, I'm a little bit unclear. If you want to go hunt deer, whether it be whitetail or a mule deer, and you buy one license, it's up to the Game and Fish to decide whether you can bring, you can give you 2 tags for you don't have to spend the money for 2 tags. I just want to make clear, you don't have to spend the money for 2 tags. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Absolutely, you do not have to spend the money on 2 tags. What it really, and they already can do this, but it makes it really clear in statute that they're separate, because deer, the way they're treating them is deer. What the process would be, if you want to hunt mule deer in an area they're trying to expand mule deer, you do what they're doing in other areas of the state. Might be 4 points or better, it might be no does, it might be a buck, but it allows them to make the mule deer tag, and hopefully they do it, as a draw tag and a limited tag, so you grow that herd while you allow others. It creates no new hunters, but it creates a larger end. I will tell you, a vast majority, in my belief, of the hunters, at least resident-wise, the ones that are worried, they don't come up shoot mule deer in my country, they come up shoot whitetail deer. And we're not doing anything with that. I'm trying to grow a mule deer herd while we have the whitetail herd. The mule deer are gonna be, they may or may not make it, the whitetail are gonna be back. I can tell you on my place, probably about 12 years ago, 13 years ago, we killed 3,000 in a 2-year period. Believe me, they come back. As far as where this came from, the good senator from up in the Valley of Stars, this came straight out of the Wildlife Task Force. It was a priority of theirs. It was one of the ones they came up with. This bill came last year, passed out of this body, and went to the other side and failed. And I have no clue who picked it up, because I got an interview on the news about me forcing it back in again. I said, I don't even know there's a bill there. I had to go out and look at the website to find out that our travel committee picked it back up. So as far as why it came back this year, my guess is it's because the Wildlife Task Force was pretty serious about what they did. It was one of their priorities. We had another one of their bills up earlier this morning. This task force spent an immense amount of time. And like I said, probably next to property tax, an issue that matters more than anything to anybody is our game in Wyoming. Our people love it. The hunters love it. Tourists love it. People that live here love it. You don't have to be a hunter, but if you're like I am, I'm a game lover. I want mule deer and whitetail deer.
Senator Schuler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And to answer again, the good senator from Star Valley, as a former chairman of TRW, we were actually assigned this topic along with the one we had this morning, because the folks on the management council felt like they were hearing from their constituents that they wanted it to come back. And also the Wildlife Task Force worked so hard on it to try to manage the mule deer population after a couple of really bad winters. And again, on the west side, we don't have the real issue with mule deer like they do on the east side. But I talked to a lot of hunters, and they were not seeing very many mule deer in general on the west side. And I don't know if that was, from situation with the winter, or if it was, predators or just what. But I think anything we can do to help bring back that mule deer population is important for our state. Thank you.
Senator Hicks.
Mr. Chairman, I'll just give you a real 2 cents on why we need, it's a tool. What's going to change is probably very little. But if we ask an agency to go out and use the best scientific information to manage wildlife, you're dealing with 2 different species. It's routine across most of the western states that have both species that they distinguish. It's scientific management. You manage whitetail populations different than you manage mule deer populations. They have most of those tools already available to them. It's just a recognition that we're going to use scientific-based management for the appropriate species based on the circumstances that there is. Most of the places, you're not going to see a change in the regulation. It just recognizes that they are two fundamentally different species, and on occasion, they may derive different management scenarios and could also look at cost in the future. To my colleague from Natrona County, there could be, in some cases, that if you want to shoot a mule deer and a whitetail, you'll have to have 2 tags. The good news is you get to shoot 2 deer. Before, when you had 1 tag, you had to choose one or the other. And so that's probably not going to be prevalent, but that's already in some places already in the state where you can buy an additional any whitetail deer only tag. But I can tell you more than anything else, this just brings in, acknowledgement from a scientific basis, if we're going to use best available science, that we distinguish the species so we can apply the appropriate management tool to that species. It's just one little more tool in the toolbox.
Are you ready for the question? All those in favor of Senator Landon's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report that it do so with a favorable recommendation of Senate File 3, please say aye. Those opposed, please say no. The motion is passed the committee of the whole. Senator Jones,
Mr. Chairman, privilege of the floor.
you may have the privilege.
I'd like to welcome to the Senate some of our county fire departments from across the state. We do have Chief Walmsley from Sweetwater County, Shad Cooper from Sublette County, Chief Bender from Campbell County, and J.R. Fox from Campbell County. Welcome to the Senate.
Thank you, welcome.
I move that the committee of the whole rise and report.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. The motion has
The
passed.
president's in his office.
I'm ready.
Oh, you're right, correct.
President Biteman.
Senator.
All yours.
Thank you. Good work. All right. Let's hear the committee of the whole report.
Mr. President, your committee of the whole, having had under considerations bills on general file, begs leave to report as follows. Senate File 81, do pass amended. Senate File 28, do pass. Senate File 2, do pass amended. Senate File 34, do pass amended. Senate File 63, do pass amended. Senate File 80, do pass amended. Senate File 8, do pass. Senate File 3, do pass. Senator Pappas, Chairman.
Senator Pappas.
Mr. President, I move the adoption of the committee of the whole report.
You heard the motion. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Committee of the whole report has been adopted. And we have some standing committee reports. If the reading clerk would read those to us, please.
The following reports are dated January 22, 2025. Mr. President, your committee number 3, Revenue, to whom is referred Senate File 60, Sales Tax Distribution Rates, respectfully reports same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Case, French, Ida, McEwen, and Pappas. Senator McEwen, Chairman. Mr. President, your committee number 10, Labor, Health, and Social Services, to whom is referred Senate File 74, Immunity for Drug Overdose Reporting, respectfully reports same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Barlow, Crum, Scott, and Steinmetz. No, Senator Hutchings. Senator Barlow, Chairman.
Oh, we have a message from the House. Let's hear what the House has to say.
From the House of Representatives, January 22, 2025, message number 113. Mr. President, House Bill number 118, limitations on net land gains for the federal government, passed the House on third reading in an amended form. Ayes 35, noes 26, excused 1. Sincerely, Katie Talbot, House Chief Clerk.
All right, the chief clerk would like me to remind everybody to please do not throw away your amendments if the bill was not considered in the committee of the whole. So if you had your paper amendments up on your desk today and we didn't get to those bills, keep those because you'll need them tomorrow. It would help the process move more smoothly tomorrow, and we would much appreciate it. So thank you for that. Any other announcements? Yes, Senator Case.
Mr. President, there's going to be a meeting of the entire legislature tomorrow at 12:30 to listen to our legal counsel that we hired over the interim about electricity taxes. It's going to be in the auditorium in the connector. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Landon.
Mr. President, thank you. Just that reminder, your Senate Travel, Recreation, Wildlife, and Cultural Resources Committee will meet down in room 4, the Wind River Room, at 8 o'clock in the morning to consider Senate File 88, the 2025 Large Project Funding Bill, and then Senate File 91, the Petroglyph, Pictograph, and Historic Inscription Protection Bill.
Thank you. Let's do Senator Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Your Senate Judiciary Committee number 1 will meet in room W6 to consider Senate File 9, Restoration of Rights Amendments, continued from our previous meeting on the 21st. Senate File 104, Probate Code Revisions. Senate File 10, Settlement Agreements for Minors, Parental Authorization. And Senate Joint Resolution 1, Convention of States.
Thank you. Mr. Vice President.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Joint Appropriations Committee meeting will occur tomorrow at 8 a.m. We'll be finishing the supplemental budget markup, and that will be at 8 a.m. again in room 301. And then on Friday, your Senate Appropriations Committee will be meeting upon noon recess in room 113, and we'll be taking up Senate File 17, 18, 51, 55, and 82. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Senator Pappas.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just want to remind everyone again that your Transportation Committee meeting will be meeting 8 o'clock in the morning in room W02 and online to consider Senate File 30, Wyoming Investment in Veterans Mental Health, Senate File 102, Surviving Parents of Gold Star Veterans Exemptions, and Senate File 24, Special License Plates for Multipurpose Vehicles.
Thank you. Senator McEwen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Quick reminder, 10 minutes after we adjourn, I'll be available upstairs to talk property taxes with anybody who wants to. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. All right, Madam Majority Floor Leader, that clears the desk. I kind of jumped the gun on the announcements, but do you have a motion for us?
I do, Mr. President. Good senators, I do want to encourage you to meet the Chairman of Revenue upstairs and use that time accordingly. So since all of you raised your hands today about additional information on those property tax bills, we're adjourning early to allow you that additional time now. Otherwise, we're going to start hearing those bills here in short order. So I need you to get up to speed and ready to vote here quickly. So head upstairs if you can and meet with the good chairman. And with that, Mr. President, I move that we stand adjourned until 10 a.m. Thursday, January 23rd, 2025.
All right. Are there any other announcements before we adjourn? Nope. Hearing none. You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. That was enthusiastic. All those opposed, no. All right. The Senate shall stand adjourned till 10 a.m. tomorrow.